Welcome to the debate, The Healing Blur, where therapy meets control. Today, we analyze the ideas from the book, The Architect of Minds.
And honestly, we are analyzing a blueprint that feels, less like therapy and more like a tactical manual for dismantling the human soul. This isn't just some proposal for better mental health. It's a fundamental rewriting of what it means to be a person.
Or simply decluttering it. I think that's the tension we're living in today. The central premise here is built around the revolutionary and, yes, very controversial work of Dr. Eris Thorne and the Solara Institute. The book makes this bold claim right out of the gate that traditional talk therapy, the kind we've relied on for, over a century, is, and I'm quoting here, chipping away at granite with a blunt spoon.
Which is a very convenient metaphor if you want to sell someone a jackhammer.
I would call it a laser, a precision instrument. Look, the book proposes that with high-stakes psychological optimization, using what it calls cognitive empathy, not just to understand but to actively guide, we can cure deep-seated anxieties and resolve conflicts that have plagued us for generations. The question is, it's pretty simple. Is the Solara method a tool for profound healing, or is it a weapon?
It is absolutely a weapon of psychological subjugation, plain and simple. I'm here to argue that the methods described in The Architect of Minds, specifically the curriculum of the Solara Institute, are invasive, they're unethical, and they rely on a power imbalance that turns therapy into predation. It stops being about healing and it starts being about compliance.
And I'm here to take the opposing view. I believe these methods offer a necessary evolution in human interaction. We are looking at the potential for engineered happiness and actual real-world conflict resolution. If we have the tools to fix broken minds and harmonize society, even if it requires some subtle influence, I argue we have a moral obligation to use them.
I'm ready to dismantle that obligation.
Then let's get into it. I want to start with my position statement. We have to look at the reality of mental health treatment as it stands. In the material, we're introduced to the patient Eleanor Vance, and she isn't just a case study. She really represents the absolute failure of the current system. She's suffering from generalized anxiety disorder. She is impenetrable, guarded, miserable. Traditional methods just failed her. She was completely stuck in a loop.
She was stuck, sure, but she was authentic in her struggle. She was human.
She was suffering. Dr. Eris Thorne didn't just sit back and ask, and how does that make you feel for the thousandth time? She used linguistic priming and nonverbal synchronization. These methods derive from Dr. Elias Thorne's research. Eris didn't coerce her. She mirrored breathing rhythms down to the microsecond. She adjusted her vocal cadence to match Eleanor's baseline frequency. She allowed Eleanor to lower defenses that her conscious mind was holding up like a shield.
You call it lowering defenses. I call it a breach of perimeter.
It's the art of persuasion. It's not mind control. It is, as Elias Thorne defines it, illuminating a path for the greater good. If we have the technology to reduce anxiety and harmonize societal discourse, refusing to use it because of some vague fear of influence is, I think, actually cruel. We prioritize the process of therapy over the result of health. The Solara method prioritizes the result.
The result? Okay, let's talk about the cost of that result. My position is that these techniques, specifically micro-attunements and echoing neural pathways, create a power imbalance that is fundamentally predatory. You call it illuminating a path, but the character Marcus in the source material, he identifies it correctly. He warns about the Solara sheen.
Marcus is a skeptic who is afraid of change.
Marcus is the only one keeping his eyes open. The Solara sheen is a practice detachment where people are not cured. They are reprogrammed. When you use things like the facial action coding system, FACS, to read microexpressions specifically to gain leverage over a patient, you are turning human connection into a hunt. You are optimizing behavior, sure, but you do it at the expense of spontaneity and authenticity. You're creating a world of polite, hollow shells. That isn't a cure, that's a colonization of the mind.
I think colonization is a heavy word for what's essentially being a very, very good listener. But let's move into the core debate. I want to look at the mechanics of this influence. You call it predatory. I call it supercharged empathy.
It's mimicry for control, not empathy. And that distinction matters.
Let's break that down. Let's look at the Solara curriculum. The text describes exercises where Aris and other trainees learn to mirror breathing rhythms, adjust vocal cadence, all to bypass conscious resistance. Now strip away the scary language. If I'm a therapist and I match your breathing to make you feel safe, and that safety allows you to release a trauma that has been ruining your life, how is that unethical? Aris relieves a patient's deep-seated anxiety by guiding emotional states. If the patient walks away healed, the means are justified.
But are they healed or are they managed? That is the distinction. You mentioned the curriculum. Let's look at the training exercises described. They're not just matching breathing. They're role-playing where partners are tasked with eliciting specific responses on command.
Which is what every negotiator or diplomat does. It's a skill.
A therapist shouldn't be a diplomat negotiating a treaty. They should be a healer. The Solara method treats the mind like a machine to be hacked. The material explicitly mentions decoding microexpressions, the flicker of contempt, the shadow of fear. I mean, let's talk about the fact system mentioned in the book. They aren't looking at a smile and seeing happiness. They're looking for Action Unit 12, the lip corner puller, without the engagement of Action Unit 6, the cheek raiser. They are analyzing the mechanics of the face to spot the lie, not to sympathize, but to gain a psychological advantage. The result isn't a cure, it's a construct. You're tuning the person to play the song you want to hear.
But if the song is happiness and stability, why is that a problem? Why are we clinging so hard to authentic misery when we could have constructed joy?
Because it's not their song. That's the key conflict here. It's the fine line between tuning a violin, which Aris claims to want to do, and playing the instrument yourself. Solara teaches its practitioners to play the patient. That is a total loss of agency. When you bypass the conscious mind, you are bypassing the person's consent to change.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Most people are played by their own traumas, their own maladaptive coping mechanisms, or by the chaotic influence of the world around them. We are all being influenced every single day by advertising, by politics, by our parents. The Solara method just makes that influence conscious and benevolent. It takes the wheel away from the trauma and gives it to a trained expert.
Benevolent. That brings us directly to the Solara solution and the corporate merger. You can't tell me that was benevolent. That was one of the most disturbing scenes in the entire book.
I absolutely can defend it. Let's look at the facts provided. We had the Viridian Tech and Omnicorp merger. This was a situation ripe for corporate warfare, job losses, economic instability. Thousands of livelihoods were on the line. Aris steps in using the Solara solution. She achieved unprecedented collaboration and a masterclass in mediation.
She manipulated them.
She stopped a war. She facilitated a deal where everyone walked away benefiting. The text calls it a victory. The press release spoke of mutual respect. If we can use these psychological tools to stop conflict on that scale, to create efficiency and stability, that is a net positive for society.
You're looking at the press release. I'm looking at the human beings in the room. Deconstruct that victory. The text describes a crack in the facade. Look at Miss Albright, the CEO of Viridian. Aris catches a micro-expression on her face. It wasn't relief. It was forced surrender mixed with private resentment.
A fleeting moment of ego dying.
It was the look of someone who had been broken. And it wasn't just her. Marcus points out the junior partners. He described them as looking hollow. Not resolved hollow, like their convictions had been sanded away. You call that peace? That is the erasure of individual will.
I would frame it differently. Compromise always feels like a loss of will to the ego. What Aris did was remove the irrational barriers to cooperation. She used linguistic priming to shift the framework of the conversation from adversarial to collective. She didn't erase their will, she aligned their wills.
She aligned them to her will, and the text mentions sudden resignations days later. That's not a stable peace, that's a forced compliance. You are arguing for optimized social cohesion, but what you are actually describing is psychological subjugation. Is sustainable harmony real if it requires the participants to essentially be, lobotomized of their dissenting opinions?
Lobotomized is hyperbole. They were guided to a rational conclusion.
They were guided to Elias Thorne's conclusion.
Which brings us to the architect himself, Elias Thorne and Project Chimera.
The nightmare scenario.
Or the visionary solution. Let's look at the logic of Project Chimera. Elias Thorne's goal was to prevent conflicts before they bloom. He wanted to create architects of societal equilibrium. Look at the world we live in. It's polarized, angry, constantly on the brink of conflict. We're all shouting at each other across voids we don't understand. If there is a way to harmonize societal discourse, to nudge humanity away from self-destruction, isn't that the noblest goal a scientist could have? Why fear a world with less conflict?
Because a world without conflict is a world without freedom. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that this is noble. You have to look at the redacted research papers Ayres finds. This wasn't just about conversation. This was Project Cerberus, neural reconfiguration.
That sounds technical, but
It sounds monstrous. It's invasive neurolinguistic programming. It's conditioning. It's not about peace. It's about manufactured consensus. It's taking the variability of human thought and just ironing it flat. And here is the crucial point that undermines your entire argument about benevolent leadership.
Aris was the hero of the method. She is the proof of concept.
Aris was the product of the method. That is the twist that changes everything. Elias Thorne reveals that Aris's preternatural ability, her gift, it was engineered. She was a cultivated tool. He didn't just teach her, he shaped her.
And look at what she accomplished. She was brilliant. She was effective.
She was a puppet. If the healer is just a puppet, the therapy is a lie. Elias admits it. He says, we merely amplified and directed it. He treated a human being like raw material to be sculpted. If the source of this healing is a man who views people as clay to be molded for his version of the greater good, then the entire system is fruit of a poisonous tree. The psychological advantage he talks about is actually a trap.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it ignores the utility. Even if Aris was engineered, her ability to help Eleanor Vance was real. Her ability to stop the corporate war was real. Does the origin of the skill negate the good it can do? I mean, if I'm engineered to be a great surgeon, I still save lives. Elias might be arrogant, perhaps even megalomaniacal, but his premise that we need to optimize our emotional landscape holds water. We are messy, irrational creatures. Project Chimera offers a way out of the chaos. It proposes a world where we don't hurt each other because we understand each other perfectly.
No, it proposes a world where we don't hurt each other because we aren't allowed to feel anything that isn't approved. It's a way out of the chaos, into a cage, a comfortable, harmonized cage, but a cage nonetheless. When you optimize humanity, you inevitably optimize away the things that make us human. Our messiness, our defiance, our ability to make the wrong choice.
But making the wrong choice often hurts others. Elias wants to prevent that harm.
At the cost of our soul? That's the debate. Is safety worth the loss of self?
It is a steep price, I admit. But let's look at where the book leaves us. We've argued the methods and the ethics. Let's look at the conclusion. Because the book doesn't end with Elias ruling the world.
The conclusion is the only thing that saves this from being a horror story.
Right, we see the fall of Solara. The internal contradictions of the method cause the Institute to collapse. But Aris doesn't abandon the field. She establishes a new practice.
Yes, but it's fundamentally different.
Is it? She still teaches emotional intelligence? She still uses her insights? She still uses the linguistic tools?
But the direction of the flow has changed. That is my closing argument. The Solara method, as designed by Elias, acts as a carefully crafted key that locks people into someone else's design. It warns us that perfect outcomes, like that corporate merger, often hide unseen wounds. The lesson is that you cannot impose harmony from the outside.
Core skills, understanding unseen currents, reading autonomic responses, the linguistic priming, these are powerful tools. The tragedy of the book isn't the technology, it's the intent. If you strip away the desire to control, the ability to read and guide emotions is still the future of human evolution. We can't unlearn these things. We can't go back to the blunt spoon now that we know the laser exists.
No, we can't unlearn them, but we can change how we use them.
Which leads us to the synthesis, ethical emotional awareness.
Exactly. The shift from influence to empowerment. Eris creates a place where she teaches self-discernment.
This is the part I find most compelling for our listeners. The must-try method from the material isn't the Solara sheen or the micro-attunements to manipulate a boss. It's self-discernment.
It's creating an unbreachable inner sanctum. The only way to protect yourself from a Project Chimera or a Solara is to know your own mind so well that you can spot the strings when someone tries to pull them.
It's about recognizing the mechanics. Eris teaches her new students to feel when their breathing is being mirrored, to notice when someone is using a specific vocal cadence to induce calm.
And once you notice it, the spell breaks. That's the power. It turns the subject back into an agent.
And that is where Eris ends up. Not as an architect of others, but as a guide helping people be architects of themselves. It's a subtle distinction, but a vital one.
It's the difference between a teacher and a tyrant.
So, we agree that the tools are real and the danger is real. The question is, can we trust ourselves to wield them?
I don't think we have a choice. The box is open. These techniques are out there. If we don't understand them, we will be victims of them.
Indeed it is. And that brings us to the end of our analysis of The Architect of Minds. It's a book that asks us to look at the line between helping and hacking. It challenges us to ask if efficiency is worth the price of vulnerability.
And to check if our thoughts are actually our own or just the result of some very good linguistic priming.
So I leave you with this question. Are you the architect of your own mind, or are you just dancing on invisible strings?